Okay, how you doing?
Pretty good.
So I invite us to switch gears again and refocus. Oh, I forgot to mention what that is. There's a whole conference on end of life kind of topics. And one of the things that Annie, who's one of the Laughter Yoga, who founded the Laughter Yoga Club, she did a workshop on lightening up about growing older. So she took the whole topic of death and turned it into a laughter yoga practice, which is typical Annie. She's capable of picking up anything and turning it into an opportunity for people to laugh. She's fabulous. So there's a whole thing for that's like many, many different kinds of conferences that are around this. And anyway, I have more thoughts if I can, hopefully I'll remember at the end of the talk to share more about it. But if we could gather in attention and focus, that would be awesome. So in this practice of the Satipatthana, it's rich. We start with the body and we let that be an anchor that we return to. It helps us relax, it helps us stay in the present moment. The second foundation is Vedana, or feeling, the quality of pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. And that simplifies things. So every contact that we have, mental or physical, can be reduced into either pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. So when we're feeling completely overwhelmed and we switch our focus to that, it makes it somehow easier to navigate. And then the third foundation is the mind objects, our thoughts, our moods. And then the fourth is to do with these characteristics of Dhamma. And so last week I just touched on briefly the introduction of the Four Noble Truths, and I wanted to go into that in more detail this time. And in particular, I wanted to speak about the cause of dukkha and explore how that's connected to dependent origination. The cycle of how the web of ciphering gets woven and how we can focus in ways that break it, and how this dovetails with limbic injury. So it's not a small topic for the evening time. But today I was speaking with a very dear friend of mine, Sharon Beckman-Brindley. She and I have known each other for 10 years. And we've taught a lot together, and we were talking about different things in different suttas, and so I was reading some of the suttas that she had referenced, which was exhilarating. It's funny how reading suttas can be exhilarating, but it was exhilarating. And I was also reading Venerable Analayo's book on the Satipatthana, and he references the fact that the Buddha had said that with the Satipatthana, with this discourse, he said that if he spoke every single day for an entire century and never once repeated himself, he still would not get to the end of this subject. So it kind of gives you a sense of the depth and the breadth of the Satipatthana, the four foundations of mindfulness. But dependent origination is similar in terms of it's an incredibly rich topic, and it's not easy to understand. One of the characteristics of it is that it's particularly easy for people to get tangled up in their brains around it, because the conceptual framework of it is not easy to grasp. And so what happens is that people just, they grab hold of the words and the terminology, and for me, I don't find that particularly edifying. So I'm going to see if I can introduce this as an experiential exercise rather than as an intellectual one. So, thumbs up if you like something. Join me. Thumbs up if you like something. Thumbs down if you don't like something. Thumbs up if it's really great. 2 thumbs up. And 2 thumbs down if it's really terrible. Okay? So I'm going to read some words, and first instinct, best instinct. Don't think about it. Okay? So just ice cream, holidays, spiritual friends, climate chaos, sunshine, taxes, grandchildren, nieces or nephews, dancing, hot springs, retreat, power outages. Okay, so, as a body experience, we get a feeling of the first impact of Vedana, right? So let me just invite you to walk with me in my own personal experience. We'll see where this is going. So, 2014, I get a concussion. So what happened was I was riding my bike and the bike had a flat tire and I turned and the bike shot out from underneath me and I went sailing and had a face plant, okay? So this created or triggered a sensory processing disorder, which meant that if there was too much sound or light or any kind of input, I was like I would have an electrical storm go on in my system, okay? Then after that I had mold exposure, and mold exposure triggered multiple chemical sensitivity and electromagnetic sensitivity, and 50 different food sensitivities. So I got better from all those things. And then we had the fires in 2017, so I had to evacuate, and then I came back. And then they were using the leaf blowers to clear the dust off. And I got a face full of that dust, which was the fallout from the fires. And my health went south. So join me, all right? So after all of this, this was kind of my reality. So sun was good for 20 minutes. Thumbs up, join me. After 35 minutes, it was bad. And after 45 minutes, it was dangerous. Friends and talking for 20 minutes was good. It was wonderful. After 35 minutes, it was good. After 40 minutes, it was bad. And after 45 minutes, it was dangerous. Restaurants, 15 minutes was good. 30 minutes was bad. 45 minutes, it was dangerous. Gluten, bad. Dairy, bad. Ice cream, bad. Garlic, dangerous. I visit somebody and their 8-year-old carpet is off-gassing. I mean, come on. 8-year-old carpet, it's off-gassing. 15 minutes, it's bad. 30 minutes, it's dangerous. I hear loud noise, danger. I look at news, anxiety, danger. Colors, joyful things are emotionally flat. So then I thought, okay, my whole system was affected. So then I thought, okay, let's do some laughter yoga. So I decided time to do some laughter yoga. So come join me. So we're going to start with, if you feel like it, come up. Reach up and tip the sky. And she's got a big tummy. You've got her spread. And there's going to have raining laughter. A little bit of raining laughter. And then we're going to come to a class and we're going to learn about dependent origination and all these things. So we're going to imagine getting in a car and driving around and coming to the class. So vroom, vroom, vroom,
Under the Theravada for this.
And we get to the class and then we're learning about all these things, and part of what we're learning is the way that we focus our attention can shift the way our limbic system is responding to things. So let's pick up the rest of the class. So when we tie this together with dependent origination, I made some copies for everyone today to help explain this. I love this map. It's gorgeous.
Ooh. Something to put up in the bathroom.
You have a lovely way of the bathroom.
What else are you gonna look at this?
Took one for Bev,
Great. And there can be one for,
Robbie, and one for Taya.
that's right, yeah. So these first, I mean, it's complicated, but the first part of it, ignorance, fabrication, consciousness, name and form, that's not stuff that we see. We don't see the way our habits condition our senses. So what we catch, if we catch it at all, is contact and feeling and craving, okay? So what we are experiencing is that before we even have contact, our system is primed. And it's primed based on previous things that we've experienced. So when I had my thumbs up, you know, all of us have associations about those things. We've all had associations and they had a positive impact. And so the immediate response is that it's positive. The same with good and the same with negative and the same with very negative. It's actually just happening in our perception. It's not here. It's a conditioned process. It's a habit. It's actually not an accurate read of what's going on. And so things generally are neutral, but we give them meaning. And depending on our associations that we have had in relationship to something in the past will depend on whether the meaning is ascribed as positive, negative, or neutral. So this is ordinarily happening to us all of the time. This is normal. As long as there's any trace of ignorance that's operating, our systems are conditioned to perceive and we interpret the world based on our past experience. Okay? But what happens when we have a limbic injury is that you take this system which is operating like this and then you pump it full of all kinds of neurochemicals that predispose the system to look for danger. And then it begins to sense and perceive danger in things that are ordinarily not dangerous. Fabric softener ordinarily is not dangerous. A carpet is not dangerous. Garlic is normally not dangerous. Sunshine is normally not dangerous. But when you impose the neurochemistry of cortisol and adrenaline that is associated with those things, that then has the body primed to look for things that may be dangerous, it finds danger all over the place, which then reinforces the loop, which then reinforces the capacity to look for danger, which then reinforces the senses being primed to see danger in places where it isn't ordinarily. I want to, so when our systems are triggered like that, the normal response is fight, flight, or freeze. And it will perpetuate more fight, flight, and freeze responses until our systems come back into a normal level of regulation. I want to tell you a story. One of the monks' father committed suicide. And he walked in and found him. And his system went into shock. And from that point on, any time that he thought about his father, all that happened for him was sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair. It was just like an instant transportation to dukkha, okay? But he had confidence that he could shift that. And so what he decided that he would do was that he would deliberately set up situations where he would make something kind or generous to somebody else living in the monastery. Somebody would go out teaching and he'd make them a hot cup of tea. people would do their laundry, he'd take the laundry in and fold it. Acts of kindness, acts of generosity, and he set it up so that he would be there to see their face when they received the gift, and when their faces lit up with the recognition of an act of kindness that had been done for them, he said, "That's for you, Dad. That's for you, Dad. That's for you, Dad." So in a monastery, when you're living with 20 other people, there's like an infinite number of opportunities to do small gestures of kindness that are unanticipated and unexpected. And every time he was there to watch the face light up, he'd say, "That's for you, Dad." And so it didn't take a terribly long time for him to switch from the association of pain, grief, sorrow, lamentation, and despair to that feeling of uplift, of seeing and remembering everyone's faces light up from the deliberate act of generosity that he had set up in order to shift the perception. So this is brilliant. This is neuroplasticity at work, and this is what happens when you have faith in the practice, and this is what happens when you understand that the perception that grabs you is not the only thing that one can focus on, that one has choices about one focus one's attention. So if we come back and we look at this map, the original perception that he had when he thought of his father was the fabrication that connected with consciousness. It impacted his body and his mind, which imprinted his senses in a way where the association, anything to do with his father, led him down a pattern that led him to this sorrow, grief, and despair. It was in the faith in the teachings that he decided to come up, it was him, it was his own idea, to shift the perception, to create these examples of generosity, to set it up so that he could see eyeball to eyeball the expression of people's face. And then from seeing that, there was the sense of contentment, of joy, of calmness, and his whole mind-body system flooding with a positive experience and good feeling, which then shifted the sense of the fabrication. So that what then happened was that his association with his father shifted from being something that was deeply unfortunate to something that had joy and ease and other people's gladness and well-being connected to it. Okay? So when we understand dependent origination as an experiential practice, rather than as something that we wrap our brains around and get tangled up into a pretzel, we understand that what we're experiencing doesn't have a solid, separate existence. It doesn't exist by itself alone as a solid, separate thing. We can play with it and shift our relationship to it by changing how we are focusing. Okay? So this is an example of something that is tragic that has turned to a warm-hearted feeling. We can also deliberately shift our attention from something that experience as danger to something that is less agitating, more calming, more regulating. So when we are feeling triggered and our systems are agitated, when we're feeling anxious, when we're feeling, then what's helpful is to do things that calm and settle our systems. And so to avoid news, to avoid things that activate, to avoid things that are agitating, and to focus on things that are stabilizing, that are calming, that are regulating, that are ease producing, that are joy producing, that wash our nervous system clear of the habit of grabbing hold of the difficulty. So our nervous systems are predisposed to look out for danger. We are wired that way, and part of the reason why we have survived up until the present is because we are brilliant at noticing danger and trying to accommodate for that. But where it has gotten out of hand is when our systems get jammed into a response where we start perceiving danger where danger is not. And then our systems are activated a lot of the time. And so the laughter yoga ends up being a really fabulous medicine for resetting the nervous system into something that is around ease and joy and a sense of well-being and a sense of safety. Because we're flooding our system and we're seeing other people who are doing the same thing, and so our nervous system is getting the signal everything is okay, that we can relax. We don't need to be worried that it's, people are laughing. It's an okay thing to have fun.
So one thing I don't understand about your example,
Yes.
I believe that happened, but it seems like just by creating additional associations with the monk's father that are positive, that was enough to make the shift for him. You know what I'm saying? Originally the trigger of anytime someone mentioned to his father that he was going down this negative rabbit hole, but he just kind of put enough other associations with his father's name, because all he did was repeat, "This is for you, Dad," in the presence of these happy situations. But somehow that changed the association with his father. That's the part I just didn't. I believe it happened. I just don't understand what's going on there.
Yes, so in his situation with that circumstance, when he associated his dad with all of these acts of people feeling happy, then when he would think of his father, what happened for him was his mind went to the joy of other people experiencing the acts of generosity. So in his situation, that's all that he needed. I'm imagining that in other people's situation, it's not going to necessarily work like that. But in his situation, it did. I think the point of the story is not that we can do it like that, but that we might be able to find a way that we can do it that will work for us. But what is important is to recognize that even though we have an association which is valid, it's valid that there's this feeling of shock. It's valid that we have feelings of grief. It's valid that our system recoils and that there's this very painful thing that happens when we think of something. What's possible is that we can learn to figure out how to refocus our attention to something else so that we change our association with that. Okay.
Yeah. No, there's some part of me that's skeptical that was enough, but it seemed to be enough for him.
So skeptical is good, to question things and to see how things work and why things work. That's helpful. It's healthy to do that. But it's what's helpful is to see how something does not have an identification. Identity is conditioned by our habitual association with something, okay? The more we think of something in a different way, the more the identity with it shifts. Okay, let me just give you an example. This is a water bottle. Agree? Thumbs up? Yeah, a water bottle. If I put this down and I use it under my head, it's a pillow, okay? So if I'm living without a pillow for a week, and I use only this as a pillow, then my primary association shifts from this being a water bottle to being a pillow, okay? Because my habit of the way that I'm relating to it and using it changes. And so my sense of, oh, give me the pillow, is related to this rather than give me the water bottle, okay? That's what happens with identity. And that's what happens when we have an emotional identity that's connected to something as a result of a painful experience. All of those different ingredients are present, So if we can attach a different emotion to that same thing, then when we think of it, our system can have a different response. So I started this talking about having this lovely, riveting conversation with the suttas. I want to pull out the Anguttara Nikaya and share with you this sutta. This is about volition. For a virtuous person, one whose behavior is virtue, no volition need to be exerted. Let non-regret arise in me. It's natural that non-regret arises in one who's virtuous, or one whose behavior is virtuous. And then it goes on and says, when you don't have regret, joy arises. It's natural that joy arises without regret. It's not a major efforting thing that we have to do to make joy arise. And then from joy, rapture, and from rapture, tranquility and calmness, and from tranquility, pleasure. From pleasure, the mind comes into concentration. From concentration, there's the capacity to see things just as they are. From the capacity to see things just as they are, there's the pulling back from being enchanted or grasping or wanting stuff and pushing things away. And from this, there's dispassion, and from dispassion, there's clear knowledge and vision. So if we come back to this map, the red map is the flood of when the cycle of suffering is generated. The green is when we are practicing the path, and it opens up our hearts to the experience of increasing levels of joy until we are seeing things clearly and not being pushed around by desire and aversion, and the mind opens up to its own natural luminous nature. And so on one side, the cycle of dependent origination is yielding sorrow and stress and the unsatisfactory nature. And then the other side, the cycle of dependent origination, is yielding release and freedom. So we have the potential to take anything that we're experiencing and have it move towards the green side of this wheel rather than the dukkha generating side of this wheel. And that choice is very much about where we're focusing and how we're relating to where we're focusing. It's not about the thing itself. Now the challenge is, for example, when any of us are navigating trauma or limbic injury, we've got the biochemistry stacked on the limbic injury side, which means that it takes some unraveling to come back to a place of calmness so that then we can experience that sense of contentment. So in my own sense, like what I was describing after that onslaught of so many different things, normal things like color or flowers or smiles or whatever, and my response was neutral. I didn't have a joy response because my system was jammed into a stress response around it. So So I wanted to bring forward the sutta on volition, because one of the things is that when our nervous system is balanced, when we're not in a fight, flight, or freeze response, then we don't have to engage in this efforting effort in order for the path to progress towards ease and well-being. There is a way in which it can be a natural progression. When the first conditions are set up, then the natural result is that the next conditions arise. When we are navigating things like our system is pumped full of cortisol and adrenaline and all the rest of that, and our senses are primed to see danger, then it takes an effort to redirect our attention to look for non-danger, to get our systems to relax and to allow ourselves to linger in those feelings of relaxation, because the habit will be to stop that ease and continue to look for where there is danger around us, because we don't have confidence that it's safe. So there's a place where effort is really important, and there's a place where we can relax and trust the process will unfold by itself. I want to close with a Halloween story. I can't remember what year it was, but I was a young nun, so it was, oh yes, I can remember what year it was. It was like 27 years ago. And I was a young nun, and I was in England, and I was staying at some friend's house, and it was Halloween. And as a nun, I have robes and I have a bald head, and this is just natural. This is what I do. This is how I live, and this is what I look like. So I thought it was going to be fun to open the door on Halloween and see what happened. So that was the fun, is just to see what would happen when I opened the door. So I opened the door, and there was 3 children, a 9-year-old girl, and she had 2 younger brothers, and the little brother was like 4, okay? So they looked at me, and their eyes opened up, and their mouths dropped, and they were like, "Who are you?" And I said, "Well, who do you think I am?" And so the girl said, "Are you a nun?" And I don't remember what I said, but the 4-year-old, he said, nah, you're just an old woman. I can tell. So I was 30 at the time. Okay. But what he was onto was that it was Halloween. And how could you know that I was for real, or I was just playing dress up as a Buddhist nun? Okay? So now, the profundity of that is actually phenomenally deep. How do we know that any of the perceptions that we have are real, or they are just a fabrication of the conditions of that moment? How do we know? So I will leave this conversation at that and open it up for questions and discussion. Yes?
So the habit patterns develop a feeling of being real. So the inner critic, for instance, feels real because it's been known for so many years. And that feeling is sort of like the self feels real, right? It's that feeling of it being real that it's hard to argue with from a cognitive viewpoint.
So you can't argue with it from a cognitive viewpoint.
Yeah, that's what I said. Yeah,
You can't.
you can't.
So what can happen though is that self-critic, you can recognize the somatic signature of it. You can recognize the mood that's associated with it. You can recognize the thoughts that happen when it's present. And then let that be a signal that the self-critic is there, and to shift your focus on something else.
Shift away from the feeling, this is a true thought, this
Yes.
is a true perception.
Yeah.
And to, there are 3 windows over there, that kind of,
Yes.
yes.
Or there are 3 windows, or can I reach out to a friend, or is there something here that I can focus on that it fills me with joy?
I think that it's where Michael's sense of skepticism comes from, is that feeling that this habit pattern of 70 odd years is real, is true. And that's a very intense feeling.
Yes, so when you have 70 years of something that keeps asserting itself as this is true, this is real, then it's different than having a whole lifetime of knowing something different and then a shocking experience where that comes all of a sudden. Yeah?
Yeah.
So it takes another kind of work and belief and faith to then see that even though you've had 70 years of this feeling repeatedly showing up and asserting itself as real, it may not in fact be the whole story.
Right.
Or that it is there because of very, very good reasons, none of which were your fault. And it still is not something that you need to believe is God-given as the truth. So for me, it has been this way for a while, that I work it from both ends of trying to replace the negative association with something that's more positive, and trying to touch, as and when I can, the luminous nature of the mind that I know is wide open and ever present and timeless and infinite and loving. And when I touch that, then it has a really powerful canceling effect of these thoughts that show up, like as the self-critic, that says that is true and that is real. But when you haven't touched that, or that's not easy to access, then there is an element of faith that is required to stay in the practice, because it keeps showing up as if it were real. And so it's like, why, there's this sense of, okay, I am shifting my focus, but it keeps showing up. So that's why, like, for example, with the dynamic neural retraining, one of the reasons why the live seminars are so effective is that you have a whole bunch of people who are there for different reasons, but they're all there because their limbic systems are jammed up. And they all have a whole bunch of different symptoms that they're navigating and limiting self-beliefs that are like this. And then people apply the program and shift their focus repeatedly, and you watch before your eyes people coming up with different bodily experiences and moods that they hadn't experienced in a very long time. So it's the mirror neuron thing. Mm-hmm. It's like whether or not you get it yourself, you see other people getting it, and seeing other people getting it gives you faith that you can get it. And the fact that you have faith that you can get it energizes your willingness to try. So part of the reason why having people who are teachers who've had a little bit more experience on the path is helpful is because it's possible to look at them and say, they have applied this and have results, and I can see it in them even if I can't yet see it in myself. How is this landing for you? Yes.
So, I've been practicing with trying to cultivate a sense of wonder and not knowing, and especially with respect to my feelings. And that seems to have really helped me to avoid dropping into a trauma pit. I think it has something to do with the orientation of like the spaciousness and the orientation in the present. But the sort of flip side, and that's, I mean, it's a sort of version of this green side of the chart, I feel like, and it helps me keep out of trauma. But once I'm in a trauma space, if I wake up in a trauma space, this like, okay, faith, contentment, bliss, that's like in a different universe, right?
It is in a different
And it's
universe.
not accessible. I mean, there's no place in this green area where I can like, okay, here I am. I'm just going to climb out of the trauma space using this chart. It seems like yes. I mean, orienting to my surroundings, connecting with others. Sort of changing my, what my mental focus is. All of that's helpful, but it's also like not really what we're talking about on the green side of things.
So I agree. And so that's why I think that what we need is an extra loop here when we're in a trauma loop, in terms of getting our systems back to some level of regulation that can then flow back into this. And so the kind of like effort that's needed when we wake up and we're just like absolutely terrified, or we think whatever is going on, that's an example or an expression of a trauma loop, then we might be able to notice that we're in it, but we need extra steps to get our systems to calm down so that we can come back into this regular dukkha,
Yeah.
regular dukkha. Regular dukkha is an
That's
improvement.
bliss compared to
Exactly, it's a complete improvement from those loops, right? And so this map is a map that does not, we need extracurricular activities when we're in one of those. Yeah.
Could you speak to the way in which this is a loop? I'm not understanding the connection from the green over to the red and the red to the green.
So in an ordinary situation, let's take ice cream. Okay, something hopefully not terribly activating. Ice cream is something most people had their thumbs up, even 2 thumbs up. It's a pleasant experience. And so you see it or you think of it and your system is moving towards, I want it, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And so the wanting it then is, okay, so the first chunk, ignorance, fabrication, consciousness, name, form, and 6 senses, is what happens unseen. You see the ice cream, or you feel the ice cream, you have a thought of the ice cream, and that's the contact. And the next is the feeling, it's very strongly positive, okay? We don't notice the positive feeling. What usually happens before we notice it is it moves right into craving and want. And then that moves into clinging, which is the moving out of the presence of just noticing want into getting ready to move towards an activity. How do I get some? The becoming is the movement into wanting to get the ice cream. The birth is you're eating it, okay? Once you're eating it, then the aging, death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair comes as the result of following on after acting out something that was based in clinging. When there's just pure awareness of ice cream and pleasure and the awareness of it without the clinging connected to it, we can have pleasure without it necessarily moving into this whole cycle. But when there is sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair, we have a choice. And the choice is whether we perpetuate the cycle that then reinforces the ignorance, or whether we choose to practice, which then puts us in this green cycle that has us moving into a way of opening up to an alternative. So at every moment of stress, at every moment of unsatisfactory moments, at every moment of difficulty or agitation, when we're not in a limbic loop, we have a choice about whether that stress feeds more ignorance or energizes our motivation to practice and see what's happening and cut through the cycle. Does that answer your question? So if we are clear, so let's say we're having ice cream, and instead of this whole desire thing, there is pure awareness of pleasure and watching the pleasure arise. So you're tasting the ice cream without getting lost in the craving associated with the pleasure. Then it moves from a cycle of suffering into a cycle of rapture. And that cycle of rapture then informs your perception of the ice cream the next time you have it.
Is there a way that the cycle includes unbinding leading to ignorance?
Unbinding does not lead to ignorance. Unbinding deconditions ignorance.
So actually, maybe instead of a circle, it's a spiral. I mean, because once you're unbound with the clinging of the ice cream, it doesn't mean that the next, it's not a cycle, then it goes back to ignorance. It's actually a spiral up.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's
They're
right.
not
That
next
may
to
be-
each other, they just happen to be on this chart, landing next to each other, but
That's right.
there's no
It's 3D.
functional connection.
Right, so unbinding does not condition ignorance. Yeah. Unbinding conditions the ending of ignorance.
We need scissors to make a spiral.
Maybe like a shoots and ladders game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there any thought that if these factors here are stronger, you're less likely to be, I guess I'm trying to think, if you're kind of more equanimous or generally content, you're less likely to have you're more likely to have the pure awareness experience versus the grasping? I would just, like I've been noticing for the last month, there's a lot of things that seem to trigger me into a negative spiral that usually don't. So I'm kind of like, well, what's the underlying condition of my mind that does this? And so I'm just wondering if these factors are stronger, then it makes it less likely. Does it create more space?
I think so, maybe we can check it out in our notes period. So it was not missed on me that in the check-in this evening, lots of people were being agitated and rattled and unsettled. And so you have power outages and fires burning, and you've got people who are evacuated, and you've got smoke, and you've got toxicity. It has an impact. It's harder in a situation like that for everyone to feel relaxed, calm, settled, peaceful, joyful, and content. Okay? So in our world now, with all these kinds of things going on, it takes more effort to come to a place where we're not impacted by the circumstances so that we feel that sense of general well-being. It takes more effort to arrive at that place of relaxation.
I was just gonna say, I wonder if it's not more of a shoots and ladders situation. Well, I think that there's a lot of places, like, shoots and ladders, you can either go up or you can go down. And so there's also like this place of putting space between contact and feelings and space between feelings and cravings where you might be able to exit right out the side or go up. But then I imagine there's also places over here where you might slide down over here. So anyway,
No,
I just think it's very
I
nonlinear.
I think
Right.
that's true, yeah. So it's hard to come up with a map that describes all these different variables. So you've got a spiral, a circle, a chutes and ladders, you've got there's all kinds of configurations that are going on. Yeah, I think that's right, yeah.
I'm gonna put in a vote for the spiral. Here's why. No, I mean, I agree about the chutes and ladders, and it's completely non-linear, because then it becomes sort of like an automaton sort of a thing, and it's not automatic. So, yeah, you can backslide, you can go forward. But I think the general spiral thing, the thing that's really, and thank you for making, that was really, kind of made me think a lot. Once you've completed a spiral, I feel like you're in a much better position to take the next issue and move it to a higher level, once you understand and get it. Do you know what I mean? So it's not, if it were a circle, you're sort of like, I feel like you don't gain any momentum. But I feel like once, the ice cream thing was great because I can understand it, so then my level of understanding is a little higher. So maybe then I can take lasagna, and move it up, and then from there move out of the food groups into maybe, you know what I mean? But the more reinforcement there is that this actually works, then you can take something more challenging, and later you might actually get to the smoke or the fire or something and see it less triggered, with the beta-ness, but something where it can be more neutral, because you can see how it's been done with other examples. Does that make sense?
Yes, and so in my own personal experience, I was being activated by burn areas even though the fire had long passed. So my system would have all kinds of physiological responses if I would go into a burn area. And so I was in Piedmont and driving to Santa Rosa, and the GPS routed me through the burn area. And so I was doing the DNRS protocol while I was driving and laughing for no reason in the car. And I was fine. So in the past, that would have caused eye burning and itching and throat burning, all kinds of physiological things. But I was refocusing my attention on these other things so that I was in a place that ordinarily would have been a problem and it wasn't a problem. So that we can see signs that it works, both in the limbic repair as well as in the ordinary dependent origination loop. Yeah, which is great, because then it feels like, well, we've got some choices. We're not just stuck in these patterns, even though they have longevity to them. We have some crowbars that are actually and fulcrums that are big enough we can shift the earth. No matter how big it is and how long standing it's been there, there's places where we can get some leverage under it. Yeah.
Or side-chatting.
Maybe it's time to go to some
Inquire?
inquiry.
That'd be great.
What was the question that you were saying?
I look for inquiry partners. I think I'll get.
And that notice it, what's that take place?
Or Judy.
Okay.
What about
So let's pair up and.
Gabe?
I have to skip out my clip. Sorry, dear.
No, I'm in that downward spot.
Yeah. So I will see you all next week for sure.
Good. Take care. There's some bugs going around.
You want to join that?
Yeah.
So the first question we're going to do is, how do you know that something is real, or how do you know that something is dangerous? Is that? Yeah. Yeah.
How do you know something is real?
Real, or how do you know if something is dangerous?
Those are two very
I want to make
different.
sure I understand.
These
the
are really
question.
two questions? Or?
Pick one of them.
Oh. I guess us were together.
We're
The person closest to me. And we're gonna, I'll ring the bell when it's time to shift. We're gonna do 2.5 minutes each.
Okay.
Practice of the evening. So if everyone could join me standing or seated if necessary. We're gonna give some energy towards the folks who are impacted by the fire. Sound good? Including you? Okay. So, remembering, I think we did this a couple weeks ago where we take up the oars. So we're not really moving it together, we're just practicing taking up the oars and pulling back and adding the breath. You don't really want the motion to come from your shoulder, you want it to come from center, from your sense of what matters to you. And I'm practicing towards joy together with this collective body. Pulling the rope, pulling up those oars and pulling back. There we go. And now let's introduce the element of coordination. Can I remain connected to what I care about and connected to the whole? So let's name something that we care about that's connected to our joy. Judy, let's start with you.
Tashi.
Sweet.
Kate.
Physical well-being.
Justice.
Nature. Ghost.
Beauty.
Connection.
What do you got, Mercy?
Buddha.
Linda.
Nature. Wholeness.
Forests. All right, and so can we stay connected to what we care about when there is an element of change, of impermanence? So we're taking this motion from center, and look at my body, right? We're letting it kind of move through the hips. And then when I say change, we're going to change. The back foot's going to come forward and change. What happened to our coordination? What happened to our belonging? Where's our collective body as we come back to what we care about together? And change. We feel the belonging. We feel what individually matters to us in the context of the whole. And change. And change every time. And remembering to breathe. Alright, letting that go and keep feeling. Allowing that aliveness to run in the body. And I think you all remember too that we did this extension, so let's extend together towards our joy from center. This collective sense of well-being and togetherness on this path. So can you really feel that movement from center through the arms? Gathering it up tonight, the goodness that we've created here, the belonging, the magic of being people who are committed to a healing path and taking a look at our own dukkha for the purposes of healing all the world. And with that intention, we're going to turn and we're going to extend out towards the people of the world who are impacted by fire, flooding, by climate crisis. And in particular, we're going to send goodwill, send the benefits of our practice to the people across California who are impacted tonight by fire. So join me in extending out, then allowing the motion of the arms to stay connected to your length, your width, and your depth. Feeling in the back body, all those who've got your back, who support you, and who are supporting those who are impacted by the fire. So sending them wishes of safety and well-being. It's okay to drop your arms if your arms are tired, as long as you're continuing to extend from center. And starting with Richard, what do we want to send out into the world from our practice tonight?
Compassion.
And moving to your right, to Terry.
Compassion.
Safety.
Safety.
Faith.
Well-being. Friendship.
So Renee?
Oh, is it me?
Yeah.
Rain.
Breath, good health. Food,
Hope. Connection.
and the phone coming back to the room. Thank you all tonight for the benefits of our practice. May they be shared amongst all of us and all beings in all directions without exception. Thank you for walking this path of the Dharma together with us tonight.
Mm-hmm.
More joy for everyone.
Very good.
Very good.
Yay!
That never gets old.
I have something to share. For those who want a slightly more cool version, it goes very good, yay. Very good, yay.
I'm going to use that at my work tomorrow.